So if you haven't done so yet, take a second to get your episode loaded and pause at the 0-second mark. And without further ado, if you've been here before, you know what we're doing next. If you're new, grab your remote and have your thumb on the play button, but don't press it because we are going to do that at the same time. Is everyone ready?
Yes, I am.
I'm
Yep.
ready. This episode starts right off.
Yep.
All right, I have mine on the Prime original. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
I'm synced up with you.
Oh, we're so synced.
These long hallways in these apartments are they're really cool.
I believe that's called a train car apartment, right? I believe that's what the term for it was.
Maybe? I can't say definitively. I don't know.
Well,
That
I
would
mean, I
make
lived in
sense, though.
an apartment in Chicago that looked like that. It was like just kind of long, like a long apartment, and that's what we call it.
Is this the first time Ethan ever speaks?
No, he said something a few episodes ago.
Oh, did he?
Or in season 1, like every time they turn off the TV.
Oh, yeah, he
I
screamed.
was watching that.
I love this dress on Midge, but I feel like she usually wears more color than this. It's a little dull for her.
Maybe there's a reason.
We'll see.
I want someone to describe me as most presentable as of the basement girls.
I'll keep that in mind for when it comes a good time.
Face masks. Tiffany, the timestamp is 5 minutes and roughly 30 seconds.
It's one of my favorite words for cockta.
It's pretty good.
What in the world? She just found a stack of.
She hides it everywhere, you know, survivor of the depression. Apparently.
Oh, wow. Just interface.
I have to say, this episode really feels like the start of a new story arc. It really feels like we ended the last episode, like kind of concluded a little arc.
Yeah, I agree. When they came back from Paris, like it kind of felt a little wrapped up.
I love all the black dresses that she wears on.
I agree. The second one is a dream.
So I'm assuming this was really filmed at Columbia.
That looked like Teachers College.
Oh my god.
Poor
You don't
Rose.
see those very often.
Just a little shocked.
It feels like in Paris she would have seen something like that already.
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe
point.
maybe she only saw it in statues.
I
I
I
mean,
agree.
1950s US was way more prude than 1950s Paris, that's for sure.
She's like subletting her apartment. Is that what this is?
She switched with the
Yeah.
family.
She's still hiding from the goon.
I love that family.
This is funny. How are the people in the back supposed to hear?
It's funny, but it's a little over the top.
I love that
It's
the
really
model's
hanging
like,
out there.
yeah, he's like stretching. It's like, what?
Apparently, he'd never been to like a YMCA or anything because they just, I don't know, the women just like to hang out this place.
Susie's situation right here with her phone providers. I feel like all of us, whether it's internet, cables, like cell phone companies.
No, I mean, I
Oh yeah,
guess I'm old enough. I remember message unit. It was a
some
thing.
things truly never change.
And I guess it's one of those things where no matter how much phone service you have or internet or whatever, it'll never be enough, right?
Yeah. It's also funny that the call itself to the company is also long distance.
I'm curious what a kugel is.
It
I
is
know
a
that
noodle
Kugel.
casserole.
I know that Kugel in German is ball, and so Yiddish is a Germanic dialect. So I'm guessing it's a ball of something,
It's a casserole, like with noodles and cheese and other things depending.
and it's pronounced Kugel.
Kugel. Yeah.
Kugel.
In fact,
It's
is
salacious.
is Sabrina here around Hanukkah? She gave me her recipe for kugel, and it was amazing. So I'm just saying.
Google. Now I want Google.
Hey guys, how far in are we? Catch up.
We're at 20 minutes and 45 seconds.
Cool. Thanks.
Oh man, this is a punishment.
Hunter is disappointed.
I expected something more salacious.
It should have been like a club or something.
But we did see a naked man, so I don't know.
Close enough.
Balances out.
He's a priest. He's got to be Irish.
This room feels incredibly uh realistic.
Incredibly what? Sorry.
It feels very realistic to me. A lot of the church basements I've been in feel very much like this room.
Right down to the peeling ceiling. Heck yeah.
Yeah, the peeling ceiling and the massive amounts of wood paneling.
Wood. Yeah.
I'll tell you about this Mr. Bear prayer at the end.
Oh my gosh. I hope that there is.
I was thinking the same thing. That's too funny.
How do they manage this without noticing? This is not encouraging at all. Make them all drop out.
I always like the scenes in
Every time there's a scene in this diner, I have an overwhelming urge to go to a diner.
Whenever I see these scenes, I just think of Seinfeld.
That diner is also next to Columbia.
I don't think Harry Drake is responsible for this.
Susie is just so great.
They were holding this room for the bingo ladies.
Yeah.
stand-up comedy routine coming?
Trouble coming. You know it.
Here it is.
No mic, but we have a champagne glass.
It's a fake mic.
Ooh.
This is not the right
Oh
show.
my goodness.
She needs practice reading her room.
Yeah.
So cringe.
Oh.
She's still going. Oh,
I mean, this is a little cringy at plenty of weddings in 2022.
Yeah.
Really is.
yeah. She's not even related to anybody. She's just an invited.
I got to think, who's the real manic person, mom and maid, to bring another show, or man? Oh,
oh,
poor Midge.
It's like being called to Headmaster Charleston's office.
I was thinking the same.
it's so. I mean, I know it's of the time, but it's so bothering that they called in her husband because the little girl's in.
And Abe, what a stand-up guy. Paris did them a lot of good.
Fig leaf.
Simon has no idea what just happened.
Luigi TV.
That's so funny. I mean, that Luigi TV seems so ridiculous today, but I bet that kind of was pretty fun.
I
I
liked
mean,
there was a commercial break.
yeah, I mean, it looks, I mean, better than television back then.
I love this set of the factory.
Oh, I love it.
It's so beautiful. It's rich. It's like it's just every nook and cranny is filled with something.
I would love to see all those fabrics.
It reminds me of where I used to work in a textile company, and it's just like rows of fabric.
Wait, has she never heard this?
Nope.
Nope, she did not.
I love that she picked that up and didn't even look at the cover when she put it on. She gonna go get her money.
That's right. Old
Safe enough.
time bootleg. Look out.
That was a Dan episode.
It it kind of felt like it was
Yeah.
here too.
Yeah, it definitely felt more of a
Oh,
Dan episode. She shouldn't have left that booth.
makes you wonder if Dan could have been that dirty on Gilmore Girls. What he
I like
So,
this episode. I like this episode best so far of the season.
Really?
Yeah,
Same, I really liked it. I thought the thing with the treasure maps was really fun.
totally. Yeah, in general, I like the more I reflect on those first two episodes, I really just really didn't like Paris. And now this episode feels it feels so disconnected from those first two episodes. It really feels like just a new the start of a new story. It almost feels like the start of a new season, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I actually didn't mind the Paris episodes, but after seeing this episode, like I can't help but think like how out of place the Paris episodes feel.
But, you know, the Paris episodes are the catalyst for the Rose storyline with the art classes. So, um, like I'm not sure where they're going here, but I feel like that's that's what that we needed that to get to here. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like if the final if Paris had been at the end of season one and had ended season one with them returning from Paris and that whole thing, it would have felt similar. Like
Yeah.
it's not that I of course I recognize that like Paris set up her being in art classes here, but it feels disconnected from it in the sense that like it feels like just sort of the opening of something completely new. Um, in the same way that yeah, everything in season one set up where Midge is, in her stand up at the beginning of season two, but doesn't necessarily feel like part of the same arc. And so it's just odd that it's just two episodes that feel in a way like their own kind of mini season. And now we're back, and it feels like it's the start of a new season.
do you know
That's part. I think that's partly because all of it takes place in New York, and that feels much more familiar. Um, but just um, that sort of quick getaway to Paris. Yeah, if I mentioned it last time, but it's almost like those like Brady Bunch goes to Hawaii episodes. Feels like it felt like its own thing, and I'm just glad to be back in New York because I feel like now watching this episode, I realize that it's that for me that's just a important part of this show is that New York City is a character, and I kind of missed it. Certainly missed it in the first episode, and kind of missed it in the second episode as well. Even though Midge was already back, but it feels like New York City is back. Everyone.
what I kind of like about this episode is that we see Midge doing her comedy routine towards the beginning, and she's doing real well, getting lots of laughs and everything. And then everything after that, she's not perfect at anything she's doing anymore. And so I kind of like, I don't want to see her fail, But I kind of finally feel like, okay, she's not as perfect as we all think she is, or has been, because because the first two episodes she was talking about how amazing she was all the time, other than when she told the Paris audience about her failed marriage. But she wasn't all amazing this time. She disappointed many people. So it makes it
I
more interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, I agree. She needed to fall to, hopefully climb back up again. But I mean, the name of this episode is just, I mean, it's interesting because yes, the basement of the church is the punishment room, but she got stuck in a little coat uh, closet.
Yeah, the coat closet was kind of a bit of a punishment room. But also, I would say it has a third meaning in the sense that the room that they ended up having the marriage, the wedding in, or the reception in, was the window room, but it ended up
It,
being a punishment room.
yeah, it was Midge's punishment
It
room.
was Midge's punishment room. She got punished in that room.
Yeah.
Too much
And
cheap
then of
champagne.
course there's Joel, still living at his parents' house, or
Oh
potentially moving into his
yes,
Oh
Yeah.
dad's
you're
yeah.
factory.
absolutely right.
And that scene in the bank, it's like almost like every room is the punishment room.
Oh, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. There isn't a room in this episode that's not a punishment room. um
Although that
I
final room at the very end, I
yeah.
don't know if I would call that a punishment room. I mean, I know it kind of looks kind of nasty like a punishment room, but it felt like the first time where there was a little bit of hope. Like there was a room that offered a little bit of hope.
Although interestingly, it also doesn't have windows. And it's like literally like she says it's deeper in the building, and like if you're on a big floor of a giant building that's like sort of spans a city block, the middle of it is the most depressing part of
But
that,
but isn't
you
that
know.
kind but isn't that sort of that isn't that kind of an interesting thing that like the room that really looks the most like an actual dungeon, whereas that the coat room sort of served as like, oh, you're back on the on the main floor, you're getting close, all of these things like the window room, all of these rooms that sort, or a bank, all these places that sort of are not supposed to be punishment rooms sort of end up being punishing. And then there's this room at the end that I don't know. I mean, I get it. It looks like a dungeon, but that moment there with him, like, I found it, like the freedom that he feels like he got sort of transforms that room for me.
Yeah, and also, I mean, that's a great observation because the whole episode with the treasure map is all about perspective. Like he's got to keep turning the map to like find where the money is, but like I guess you could say like has to keep turning the map of his life to like figure out where he goes from here, like what's going to be the next step. And so I think I like that
And the tre-
symmetry
and the treasure
there.
map and the treasure map led to that room.
Yeah.
Like that was, so in the end, it like X marked the spot, like on his own, on what he was really truly searching for.
Yeah. I also like that you brought up earlier, like, we're back in New York. It's a character in the show. They're kind of throwaway lines, but like every time they talk about a street, like, oh, 23rd or 58th or, all these things, like it is really significant that the clubs that she's getting are on these particular streets. And I think that might be lost on like a lot of people. But, to be in Midtown versus downtown is a really big deal. So like the fact that, like last episode, she's getting midway to Midtown, that is upward mobility for her. And so, the goal is to get to Midtown to be able to play those clubs. That's where the money is, that's where the tourists are. So I like when she says 23rd, it's Midtown. Like, no, it's not. Like I love that like
What is
reality check.
Midtown? What's
So
considered
Midtown would
Midtown?
be Midtown would be anywhere between like 34th Street, which is where B. Altman is, and like 59th Street, which is where Central Park begins. So, when they said like, oh, 58th, I was like, oh yeah, like that would be like that. Carnegie Hall is on 57th Street. So like, like that would be a bigger deal for her, east or west side or in the middle. Like she'd be doing much better on 58th versus 23rd at that time. Now it's a little different because like there's definitely like a lot of great clubs like that are famous because of this time in those other areas. But if they want a lot of money, they need to go to Midtown. And so it's significant that she's they're dabbling in other streets.
So if 34th Street is Midtown, that's what you said, 34th, right? Approximately.
Correct, yeah.
Is 50th the start of Uptown?
I would
Like the beginning of the
no,
park?
I would say 59th Street is the start of Uptown because 59th Street is where you get Central Park. So then anything above 59th Street on the east or west side that goes up, alongside the park would be considered, more Uptown. So like Upper West Side, Upper East Side.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I was trying to get an idea of the point of reference because since you're talking about how the streets are kind of important, and I thought I'm sort of familiar. I remember when we walked a lot of those areas and were a few times when I've been there, but I wasn't even sure where the beginning of I knew what downtown was when you're way down there, but I didn't know where it ended versus. So thanks.
Yeah,
I
no,
have
of course.
I have a question, geography question with that, sort of an extension of that. Would Uptown East and West always be referring to east side and west side of the park? Like if you pass the park, are you still in Uptown?
Yeah, but so past the park, then you're in East Harlem or West Harlem. So, you know, uh the park goes to 110th Street, and Columbia University is on the west side at 116th. So if you're above the park, you're now in like well, they call it now Morningside Heights, but on the west side. And on the east side, it's like it. Sorry, yeah, on the east side, it's like East Harlem. And then so after Columbia, like Teachers College is on 120th. Anything above that is Harlem until you get to like Hamilton Heights, Washington Heights in upper Manhattan, and then Inwood at the very, very top.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
yeah.
knew that there were those neighborhoods above the park. I guess what I'm asking is, would Uptown, you know, Uptown be considered its own neighborhood, or is it a reference to the upper part of Manhattan, which would also include East Harlem and all of that, or is it like no, Uptown is specifically the east and west of the park?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are when you're talking about it. Like
I
I think
gotcha.
I think if you're on 23rd Street and you say Uptown, you might be talking about Midtown, or you might be talking about the Upper West or Upper East. It depends
Okay.
on you'd need context clues. But I think generally when people are way downtown and they talk about Uptown, they might be talking about Midtown, because it's a cab ride, it's far away, so it's like,
Like if
it
you're
really does
saying
depend on your vantage.
I'm heading uptown. If you're really really far south, then it just could mean you're just going up.
Yeah,
Right,
you
you're
could be.
just going up somewhere.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
So
Whereas
if you're
like,
down in the if you're down in the lettered streets, then and you say you're going uptown, you might only be going to like 30th or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, I guess like that's so anecdotal. Like I feel like it would depend on who you're talking to. You might know the answer depending on who you're talking to. But like I make a joke because I live on the tippy top of Manhattan. So I always make a joke that like, Harlem for me is downtown. Whereas like for most other people, it's way uptown. So, really just depends on where you are.
Got it.
That
I
helps. Thank
Yeah, I thought it was funny when Susie uh, was calling. They were performing on 23rd, and she was like, "Oh, it's just a short walk to Midtown." She was like, "No, it's not."
Well, not for Midge Maisel. For most normal people, it's a nice walk. But for Midge Maisel, she would take the cab.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say about this episode is, um, when Midge does the wedding scene, which is the worst scene I think we've seen so far of her doing stand up or quote unquote stand up. It's inappropriate on every level, but like that reaction is what I wanted from her Paris stand up. Was like,
Yeah,
I wanted it to fail in the same way. And like, the good thing about the scene in this episode is that it does fail. Like, it should, because it's terrible. And that was what I was really missing from that Paris scene. I was like, this is not funny, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it should fail, and it's not failing, and that's like has me questioning the show. But like in this episode, obviously she's losing everything that she's gotten at this moment, including the coat check job, because that was really, really, really awful, and she doesn't know where to go from here, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoy the fact that she's getting her hands dirty and yes, failing. As you know, there's failure throughout the episode. Digging in the walls to find the money. On her side, on her hands and knees in the robe. It's like there's this roughness that's happening, and her veneer and the sheen and the spoiled person comes, begins to come off a little bit more here in practical ways, and it's cool to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I love when Susie says, "See, I'm never gonna find $2,000
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
wall." Like, they're not having the same conversation, which is, I think, Midge's fatal flaw sometimes, is that she doesn't read the room.
she's a little tone
And
deaf. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and as
Oh
a
yeah,
as a performer, her entire job is to read the room. So like, that's, it's not like a small thing. It's actually a big deal that she often doesn't.
Although we can only hope that Susie, quote, found some money by finding the record. Hopefully, I mean,
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
literally in a hole in the wall, because that store is a hole in the wall.
And we're still dealing with Midge's internal conflict too. She doesn't save the day in the diner. She's not going to go over to the guy. She's hearing how hard Susie has it, and still, you know, uh, she still has her line that she won't cross, and there's an area that she won't go to, and that internal conflict about hitting it big versus staying in safety and comfort.
It's like she sees it as selling herself or something, and she doesn't want to do that. And I'm not saying she should be, as Susie implied, slutting it up or whatever, but she does need to learn how to sell herself to get a gig, but not in like the way Susie was implying.
Right.
Well, but this is the woman that she got the rabbi, right? Like, she does it in every other area of her life. So it's interesting that she won't do it
Mm-hmm.
for her career, or for Susie's.
Well, I mean, she's not used to working. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And since when can you check a dog at a coat check? Oh, sorry.
That was
I
funny.
was thinking about that during the episode. What do they do with the
I don't
dog
know.
in
I
that little
mean,
tiny booth?
it's possible that back then you
You're
did. I
missing
don't
that
know.
old time service. Yeah.
Well, I mean, since when is there a coat check? We don't have those anymore at all either.
Yeah, but they wouldn't
Oh,
let
not
you.
at
They probably
malls.
wouldn't let you take your dog into the cafe upstairs. So
Yeah.
You
yeah,
can check your
They did
kid
have
into
them when we
you can
cafe
check
up.
your kid into a daycare at a grocery store. So maybe that's kind of the same.
when I was a kid hunter, there was some coat checks at some of the stores we went to in the wintertime. But that was like the 70s and early 80s.
yeah, I feel like you could still find coat checks probably at like nice restaurants and
Oh yeah,
things like that.
restaurants.
I I don't. I'm still not convinced that Drake is behind the the people that are
I was
after
gonna,
Susie.
I was just gonna
I
say, it
just
doesn't look like it, does it?
I mean, I know that they made that little joke out of like, oh yeah, that's Hollywood, that or that's entertainment, but if that ends up being the case, then I would probably fault that as a little over the top writing. Like, the idea that he would be sending goons after her to like break her legs or, or potentially kill her. But then is like super cheery in public and wants to have lunch with her seems a little hard to buy. And I think if that's the case, I would just be like, oh, okay, that's just supposed to be a joke. But realistically, it feels like they're going to actually have their little meetup and their little lunch together, and he's going to be like, what are you talking about? I didn't send anybody after you, and in that moment she's going to be like, well, what the heck, then what the heck is it, that kind of thing. And if he's cheery at all, it might be that he is recognizing that maybe, this Midge Maisel is somebody he should probably be, you know, like a little that he should be, I guess, looking out for,
Not
or
not shunning.
yeah, paying attention to, because it looks like she might actually be, getting some recognition, and certainly has the favor of an important comedian. Um, that's my guess, but it could end up being that it was, that he's actually, that he has sent those goons on her, which would, I think, make the moment in today's episode a little outside of the style of the show for me. It would be a little more kind of quirky, goofy moment rather than anything that I could really say is as realistic as so much other stuff in the series is.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that what I think happened was that he probably saw that article that was written about her, about Maisel. Um, and from that, he realized that, oh, this is somebody I need to watch out for. And that's like what was behind the interaction with him and Susie today. I don't think that he's the one that sent those guys after her. I am interested to find out who did, but I don't think it was him.
I could imagine it being, Sophie. That's her name, right? Sophie.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
who I
Yeah,
kind
so
of
I
would
think it
think it
is.
would be if it's one of
I
them.
can
I think it
imagine it
would be
being
her.
Sophie. I can imagine it being Sophie. She seems like the type that would do something like that.
And
I
it was her name that Midge kind of slandered in a way, or made fun of. It was her. So
Yeah.
but then wouldn't she go after
Yeah,
Midge?
I was
Like,
gonna say, wouldn't
you
she go after
know?
Midge then?
I I I have another, and I truly don't remember the answer. I really don't. But like my other feeling is Amy Sherman Palladino was like, I'm doing a show about New York in the 50s. I know I need mobsters. Like, like I kind of feel like that's sometimes part of the writing is like, what was New York City like in the 1950s? Like,
Yeah, I
and just
can
like
see
throw in
that.
a lot of the trappings of like what
Yeah,
we perceive looking back as like,
like
you know,
stereotypes.
yeah, like zoot suits, and you know what I mean? Like I kind of feel like that.
nude models.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of feels like a little bit of a decoration in a way to make sure that we remember that we're in the 50s in New York.
I get that, but
Like,
then I would imagine that they would at least sort of explain it in a way that wasn't, that had some sense of realism. And I think that if that's what they're trying to do, like if that's the idea, like, hey, look, this is a big thing, we want to put it in there because it just paints, a better picture of what New York was at that time, blah blah blah, whatever. then I would be satisfied if she just finds out it was because of some gambling debt that she forgot to pay, or because of some loan shark that she borrowed money from a while
Yeah,
ago
I
and
was about
completely
to
forgot
say
about.
maybe Susie and Joel's parents go to the same loan people.
Most likely.
I would just
Hey,
rather
speaking
it be that than it to be connected to Harry Drake in any way. Like, it just it feels it would I would rather it just be a little, a little flavor on this time period and and New York, and maybe even a nod to a really like overused trope. But I feel like it's just adding a lot of like layers. It's a I don't know. I'm not gonna pass any judgment until I see for sure how it plays out. But right now, my hope is that it's not connected to Harry Drake, and I have a feeling that it's not. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that they literally shot that like on location down in the Rockaways, which is not close to a lot of other things. So it kind of feels like I don't know, like they did put a lot of into it. Like,
maybe it's a vehicle to show us Susie's past.
maybe. I mean, that could be cool to like find out who she is.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I hope that that's what it is. I hope that we find out that Susie's like, oh yeah, that's that. Oh gosh, I forgot about that. Like, and that I think that would be fun.
Well, and to show what she, what the neighborhood she came from was like and all
Yeah.
that. I was gonna say when Mandy mentioned Joel, I'm interested to hear, okay, because we've talked about Joel on and off, all of us, a lot over season one and the first episode here and things. So Joel got a different direction in his storyline right now. So now we're seeing Joel kind of almost like trying to figure out how to be a single dad, spend time with his kids, a place to be away from his parents. What do you guys all think of that? I mean, do those of you who didn't like Joel more now? Do you still not care about Joel? Because he had a pretty big part of this episode, and then his mom like making like innuendo of him and his buddy being like together. It seemed kind of a little off the
I've
wall
never
since
disliked
I don't know.
Joel. I've never disliked Joel. I think I see Joel as a really flawed character. I think that he follows the archetype of the weak man that Amy puts in, or has put in her past writing. And But I think that I think that Amy's going deeper with this character than she did with Christopher, and um, I'm just I mean, I'm just fascinated by his story. Like you know, whether I think that he's made bad choices, or whether he's wronged Midge or whatnot. It's like ultimately I just want to know what happens next. Like I'm just into his story. I want to know where this character is going
I
as much
agree. He's
as
compelling.
Midge.
Oh,
That's
go
it.
ahead.
No,
Uh,
I was finished.
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say. Yeah, I mentioned before. He's on the restitution tour. He's making it right in a lot of different areas, and this is interesting to see. And it makes him, in some ways, still attractive as well to Miriam. He's his stature has elevated after being a dog, after being totally outed, after being a rat and all that stuff. He's still a player, and not just because of the kids. So yeah, if she can, if he's able to put a spark in Midge every now, there's still some flicker. That's an interesting thing. That's something you want to carry through a series that's this long. Yeah,
And
I
we
think it's
have
interesting.
and we have seen this season, we have seen a turn for the character. There has been a strength that the character has been given, um you know just just in his interaction with his own father, and and his desire to try and lift himself out of this sort of mindless this mindless career that he had been in before. I mean, I think that's if we're comparing him at all to a character like Christopher, I think that at the very least we can see that as a character they're taking him somewhere different than where they took Christopher.
John, I have to ask you one. Okay, I've been able to avoid Gilmore Girls forever. Can you recommend?
Dave.
I'm going to do this. Okay, can you recommend an episode that will help me appreciate Maisel even more?
Oh well, I mean,
Is that a fair question?
you gotta watch uh, season one, episode
Yeah,
one, and
you
then
got you got to start from the
you just gotta
beginning.
keep on watching until
Yeah.
you finished all 156 episodes. What is it? 104, 56 episodes.
$53 one.
I asked for
Yeah,
that.
153 and
I
then the
mean,
4
you can't.
revival.
Yeah, you can't just like jump into. I mean, I guess some people have, but I don't think that there's anybody who's watched Gilmore Girls. Even if they started in the middle of it, that didn't say, okay, well now I got to go back to the beginning and find
Yeah,
out, how all of this started.
there's something about the evolution of the writing that does inform later projects of Amy Sherman Palladino and Dan Palladino. Like, like watching all of Gilmore Girls, you can kind of see where Mrs. Maisel comes from, like in their trajectory of writing. So you know, it's hard to recommend one episode. It's kind of like you kind of need the whole thing
I
to
can't
be.
come in on the pilot. I
Yeah.
can't kind of come in on F1
Mm.
and not enough. Huh? Well, thank you for the
You could
warning.
watch the first one John was in and then go back. What was that? Season 3 something. And
Yeah,
then go
watch
back and watch
all
I'll
the
episodes
I'll
that
honor
not
John.
every
episode
season.
one of
I'll give it that one.
I think episode
Yeah.
one of Gilmore Girls is a really strong pilot, but the series, you'll I think that you'll fall in love with the series in season one, but the pilot feels very much like a pilot. Like,
Yeah.
people's hairstyles are different than they are in episode two. It's like pilots are usually shot way earlier than the rest of the
Right.
first season. So, it's got a lot of the like problems of any pilot. So I would just say watch it. It's got a really, really interesting premise. And then, Cinnamon's Wake, what is that? Episode three or four or five?
Yeah,
I
3.
think
Well,
it's
It's episode three,
3.
right?
yeah,
I
I
think
think
Yeah.
it's 3.
that was the episode that like got me. That was the episode where I was completely hooked. So that's only 3 episodes in.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you. That's thoughtful answers, all of you. Appreciate it.
Of course. I mean, we always want to make a new Gilmore fan. I wanted to go back to Joel for 1 second and just say that even if you hate Joel, which you're entitled to do, um, I really like in this episode Joel and Midge are coexisting in a way that doesn't feel like other divorces or other separations. Like they are absolutely on the same team. I don't really see a spark of romance between them in this episode. I see a lot of like camaraderie, which I really like. And I think that's a great dynamic for them at this moment in time. Like they've sort of said all they need to say. Like she's in love with him. He loves her too, but like can't be with her. Like I feel like this is a really healthy place for them to be in. And I like that they were working together to find the money. They were working, they had like pretty nice conversations. It just felt like they could be good friends. And I really liked that about them this episode.
Me too. I do like that. I like the way they write the characters when they interact together because it's not like negative all the time.
Yeah, it's sort of writing against type too, because it's like you expect any divorce in any story to be bad, like to not be amicable. And I think it's a nice twist to be like, hey, actually, these two could be fine. Like they could just be fine, not together. And maybe that's what needs to happen, and like, and that it's good and it's healthy and it makes sense. Like,
Well, not just that, but the fact that the reason they split, you expect them not to be
Yeah.
amicable. One party cheated on the other. So like I would have trouble getting along with my ex had I been in the same situation. So that is pretty surprising.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I really like Joel in this season, and I think it's interesting to see how their stories are going in different directions. Where now, you know, she's having more of these crises. Like she's realizing, oh, I'm messing up, and then like Joel, who is supposed to be like the schlub, and then he's now having to like save his parents and kind of come to task. And so I think it's interesting to see how it's like shifting the balance.
Yeah, subverting our expectations. I love it. It's the reason why I also just I why I enjoy the moments when a character like Midge, like the who seem like invincible, are met with you know a scene like the wedding scene. I foresee that there will be more of these like just knocked down. They make they kind of drive the narrative for me. That's why I want to keep watching. I'm not interested in watching characters that are perfect.
When will she
Yeah.
learn to read a room, though?
She may never. She may never. She may never. And like that's okay. you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that a lot of that comes from her privileged upbringing too. Um she hasn't ever really had to because like automatically because of where she comes from, she's usually well liked and well received. So I think that a lot of her privileged upbringing is why she's just super out of touch and can't tell when people aren't necessarily accepting of her.
Yeah, she has this sort of it's like she almost like wanders into places and then is like surprised when people don't like her. It's like sort of this wide-eyed like, "Oh, like me? Like you don't like me? Like but this works in my circles, and it's sort of like it's nice to see her, like I said before, like failing because that's not the whole world. Like her world isn't the whole world. And so it definitely feels a little bit satisfying when, she wanders into a place, with people that she doesn't really know and isn't killing. And again, that's why I hated that Paris scene because like she shouldn't have killed there. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I can see that. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But going back to Chris's question, about the people who did not like Joel in the beginning and how they feel now. I was one of those people. How I feel now is confused because I find myself liking him in some situations and then really despising him in others. Like, um, I wasn't here for Saturday's watch, but I did watch that episode today. And I'm sure it was talked about when he was going to buy that apartment for Midge. And like, as soon as he showed her and he's like, I want to buy it for you. And I'm like, yeah, but what's the catch? And then he's like, you could quit your job. There it is. But I do like him in this episode where he's like taking care of his parents and how his parents have made it this far in life, owning a business I will never know. But I do like him. I like him taking charge. Um, but I don't know. I still don't trust him 100%.
I think that's fair. I think I was thinking about the last episode a bit more and what I really love that apartment scene because the last conversation they had was she said, I'm in love with you. And he said, I can't be with you. Right. So now the next thing is, like, where does that leave them? So like the next thing he does is try to buy that apartment for her. And they have that big fight in the apartment, which makes a ton of sense because how dare he suggest that she quit her job and like do all this stuff for her when it's his fault that they're not together. But I what I really like about Joel is that he's an incredibly flawed character. Like he's finally coming around to the idea that he is flawed, like he figured out like what he did wrong, and he's, I think, starting to figure out why he did it. And he's like, okay, well that means I have to fix it. And then he misses the mark. And I think that is really interesting because you can't fault him for not trying at this point because he's trying very hard.
Yeah.
He's just doing all of the wrong things. And my favorite part of that scene is he says, I'm just trying to do one thing right. And she kind of softens and says, I know. And like, that's what it is. It's like, he really just is trying, and it's not working, but at least he's trying. And of
Yeah.
course, like, it's ridiculous that he would buy her an apartment and she would quit her job, and it shows no appreciation for who she is as a person at this moment in time. But he's trying, and he's trying to figure out the answer, and he's not going to get it until, I think, he fixes up that room in the middle of the factory and starts to figure out who Joel is. And that's what he needs to do.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? I think there's a running theme of characters not being able to read a room because it's clear that Joel doesn't, he's not always the best
Yes.
reader either.
Yeah.
I love that. Did we want to talk about Rose and Abe at all? Because this is all very puzzling.
I do,
I
I do,
loved him standing
but
up
first
for
I want to
her
say,
though.
I did a little bit of research, and the Jewish dish kugel, or kugel as they were pronouncing it in the episode, does derive from the German word for ball, and the original dish was this very round, almost ball-like casserole.
Maybe that's why they kept talking about it because the whole naked man thing and
That's
I don't
interesting.
believe that that's why. just
no,
my
but it'd be
nerdy
quite
my
funny.
just my nerdy etymological self got really fascinated with finding out the answer to that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, nerdy etymology is awesome. It's all good.
Always. Well, one thing I was reading a bit before because I had a moment where I was like, like, didn't Columbia not admit women until a certain point? So I started doing research, and like I was half right. Like Columbia College, which is like the undergraduate, like the one undergraduate college that pretty much all freshmen go into at Columbia, did not admit women until 1983, which is insane. But all the other schools on the campus like did. But what I did read is that Teachers College, which is part of Columbia University, um is, I think, where all the art stuff was, like the art, like fine arts and all that, and like art education, people going into art education. And it's interesting that the thing they got right is that Teachers College did bring a lot of women onto the campus because it was mostly women at Teachers College learning to be educators. So I thought that was like a nice way to be kind of accurate about the university at the time, because it wasn't that there weren't any women, it's just that like what they were studying, you know maybe like was segregated in a way. So post like during World War II, there were definitely a lot more women in engineering and all of that because of necessity, but like this is like the post-war era, so I was trying to figure out like what the demographics were on the campus, but that's what I came across.
That scene in the that was the dean, right? The dean of who was that? Was that the dean of the art school or
I was gonna say he's probably the head of the art department, wasn't he?
head of the art
Or
department
Yeah,
or
like it seemed it, but I don't know if they
or
actually
the
said.
dean of the, yeah, but some kind of head of that area. That's what I
okay.
thought. I'm not sure what his title
Yeah,
was. I don't know if
because
I caught.
he's the one that gave permission for Rose to, yeah, to attend.
Hmm.
Right, and he'd have pull with Abe only because like as an a professor at the like even
Yeah.
at another school in the university, like they would probably know each other. So
It was a
Mhm.
very Dan scene. I'll say that.
yeah,
I loved it. I loved it. It was like all about the comedy. And uh and it was, I mean, it was a delightful scene, but it was like I'm not really sure. I mean, maybe somebody can enlighten me here, but not really exactly sure how it moved the story forward at all.
well, it
Well,
seemed
this is where Paris. This is where Paris matters. I mean,
yeah,
he believes in her dream. He's the wind beneath her wings. This stuff he appreciates Rose
but
more, and I think because of that trip. Well, a lot of it comes out of the trip. Yeah.
the other but his whole impetus is that he doesn't want her to be unhappy because he doesn't want her to go back to Paris, which would ultimately make her happy. So, like, is it for Rose or is it for Abe? That's my question.
I think you're right to question his motives. I just well, one, I'm pushing for. I'm supporting the Paris episodes again, but two, it is their evolution as a couple. I mean, that's there. He's being a stand up guy, regardless of the
All
motivation.
right, I can buy that. That works for me. That it's that this scene is really more about how these two are working better together. Like since Paris, they actually are more simpatico, and this scene sort of shows how they can kind of work together. Is that sort of what you mean, or is it
Yes.
really more about
Oh,
him?
yes.
Just
I try not to interrupt when people are agreeing with.
is that what you mean though?
Yeah, yeah, yes, absolutely. I think that they've improved. They're appreciating each other, and yeah, they're better than they've been before.
Just
It'll be
in general,
interesting to see.
the episode, just the episode in general is just got like a lot of the quirk and dynamism of Dan episodes from Gilmore Girls. It's got a little bit of the town loner going on.
Yeah, Dan did sometimes push that kind of WV envelope a little sometimes in
Yeah,
some of his episodes as well.
totally. I mean, his episodes are the wackiest, or not the wackiest, but they get wacky, in a fun way.
So, Nancy, you said that you would tell us a little bit about the Jewish prayer that was mentioned.
Yeah, Miss Barrow. Wait,
Yeah.
I'm muted. Am I muted? No, I'm not.
No,
Miss
we can
Barrow.
hear you.
Sorry, Miss Barrow is a Jewish prayer of healing. So like like we say it like, well, in my temple, like we'll say it like in synagogue and Friday evenings we'll say a prayer for everybody who's healing. So it's kind of interesting when she goes up to the priest at that point. She's like, well, I think we have different prayers, and one of them is, da da da. And she just says the beginning line. So it's kind of interesting that she does use that prayer. Let me in the beginning. So it's like I just wanted to let people know that that's what that means. Like the first line is, "Our fathers." Hold on. Excuse me.
Are you looking it up, Nancy? I'm sorry. Is that
Yeah,
what? Because
it's
does
okay.
it?
Yeah, so it's just like it's Mishibera Chabotenu. It's like my fathers that are above us in heaven. And it's just it's a really long prayer, so I don't want to say the whole thing, but it essentially is just like a prayer to heal everybody and bring everybody together. And like when you know somebody that's sick, you will say this prayer. Um,
So it makes sense to what she was saying to the priest in that moment.
Correct, yes, because she was like, let's fix this room. I mean, it's just like it's kind of funny that she was saying that, and I'm trying to find the line I'm trying to find the line now in
Like, let's heal this situation here.
correct. I'm trying to find the
I like
line
that.
in. I'm sorry, my words sometimes I can't think straight. On the moment, I'm like not a very good off the cuff speaker sometimes.
It's all right. We do appreciate your insights
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
these things that those of us don't know.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like, did you think it should have been a different prayer? Because
No,
yeah,
no, I think it was like his. I'm trying to find that line. Hold on.
Well, it's kind of interesting watching her interact with the priest, and I didn't know what she was talking about, so
Yeah, it was
I
before.
don't.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely love getting in here and hearing your thoughts on the Jewish aspects of these episodes, Nancy, and the same
Right.
as with Diana with the New York.
Right, just
And
like
Julie,
they were in there, they were talking about the room. It's like, yeah, you and me, we talk different languages, we pray differently, and she starts saying that, but like they're like talking about the whole thing, and the whole like, let's fix this room up, let's heal this, and so she ends up getting the better room for them and all that stuff.
I was curious about the scene in the bank where his dad was like kind of pointing people out. He's like, "That's a Jew. There's a Jew," and there was something about it that felt a little cringy. It is that old fashioned that he would be saying a Jew rather than saying he's Jewish, he's Jewish, he's Jewish.
Um,
I thought he was saying that's not a Jew,
Oh, not a
but
yeah,
Jew.
yeah. I mean, I think I wasn't cringy to me. I mean, I guess maybe because maybe I've grown up with that, so it's like I kind of like, okay, he's not Jew, you know. I think he was
I think he was mistrusting of the bank. Like he was implying that they don't need a bank, and his son was saying Jewish people use banks too, and he's like, well, she doesn't look like a Jew, and she doesn't look like a Jew, and hey, are you a Jew over there? That's what he was kind of doing, or that's what I thought he was doing, and it is kind of strange to see, but I guess maybe set in that time period, maybe
Yeah, I mean that's sort
people
of what
would
I'm
have
getting
been
at. Is it
skeptical of
like
that.
is it sort of like, okay, we're like, this is definitely of an era. Um, you know, you wouldn't hear somebody talking like that in 2022.
correct.
Yeah, I think he
I
was
think
putting up
that's
his argument against what he was coming with. But I think it's also a minority thing. I'm not the
Yes.
only one who's like Strange who can identify black people. Let's say when they don't necessarily present as black. And I got a whole list, but I'm not the only one. We have fun talking about that stuff.
Yep.
Elizabeth Berkley. I'll leave it there.
And then the
yeah.
Elizabeth
But no,
Berkley.
I think Saved by the Bell. I
Yeah,
thought
no, I know who Elizabeth Berkley is. I guess I don't get the reference.
I'm she's black. She may not know it. We may have to get a
Oh,
picture of her granddad, but yeah.
yeah. But I would say this, that growing up Jewish in New York in a little later than that time period, but the vast majority of my Jewish friends, their parents were self-employed and didn't work for banks or other big companies, and had kind of a distrust of them.
I see.
So
I
there's
see.
some of that. Here's Moise. He's self-employed. He has his own business. Obviously, didn't need a bank up till then because Shirley hid the money everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is
Okay, that makes sense.
in the show the distrust of banks, I'm assuming, comes from the depression, correct?
I would say
Like I'm
based on her comment asking him if another depression was coming, that
yeah,
is her concern about it, is that she wants to hang on to her money because she doesn't want to lose it if the banks go down again.
yeah. Well, Julie, was that also your friend's parents' concern, was the depression, or why didn't,
Well,
do you know why
well,
they
I think
didn't
it was. I think
trust
it was some
banks?
of both. I mean, you know, my mother grew up during the Depression. Was an immigrant in the U.S. during the Depression. A lot of other friends' parents did too. And so there was definitely this worry that, there's going to be another depression. We're going to lose all our money. We need to save
Yeah,
because we don't know what's coming next.
Save,
So,
yeah,
like keep your money out of banks. Put it under your mattress instead.
yeah,
well, or, just save generally. I mean, I will say that, I mean, I think I was 7 when I had my first bank account. So I wouldn't say it's, don't save your money in a bank, but it's definitely save your money,
yeah.
you
My
know, and
grandpa had a similar distrust when he passed. We found money hidden in one of his barns. But I don't think it was like so much so that he would never use banks. I just think it was, well, we have this in case something happens to the banks. But I was just curious.
it's certainly I mean, the drawing the treasure maps and the saying, oh, and here's where we hide the money we used to bribe people. So, I mean, that's just crazy.
It's definitely
I
implying a mistrust of a
Yeah,
lot of things.
I figured that it probably wasn't super accurate, but it was pretty entertaining.
Oh, very.
Oh, it was hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious about how much of it was caricature and how much of it was like somebody like Joel's father. Is that a caricature or is that of the times? It certainly doesn't feel like
Um,
um, but yeah.
I don't know if it was. I mean, I don't know if he was caricature. I mean, but that's the way I guess everybody I mean, talk like that. I mean, like even like when he says, why would a fakakta bank, fakakta, and it's just like, why would this silly bank, do this or be here? And people, they always use the Yiddish, and it was colorful, colorful way of saying different things. So people sometimes didn't know what they were talking about. um, but I don't know if it was like um caricature. I think most people, I think of that era. No, I didn't grow up in that era. I'm not that old. um, I don't think what's the way. I mean, I think that's the way they not behaved. I mean, it might be a little bit stretched to a point to prove that he's Jewish or to prove that the story might be a little bit stretched and made a little bit caricature. Am I saying that right, Julie?
Yeah. No,
Like
agreed. Some of it's
exaggerated.
exaggerated for comic
Yeah.
effect, but
Right. Some of it's a little. That's Thank you. I'm like losing my words. It's like
yeah,
it's
but
not
not all of it though.
right. It's not the over exaggeration is there. Thank you for helping me because sometimes I lose my words when I'm trying to get them out. But it's yeah, it's over exaggerated, but some of it's there, and some of it's how they truly spoke and did things. But I think a little bit of it is a little over exaggerated, but not caricature. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yep, totally.
I was gonna say like my grandparents were obviously like around during that time, and I mean obviously they're not Jewish, but like my grandmother hid money and food around her house forever. Like after she passed away, like we still found money and stuff all over the house because she went through the depression and they were always scared of that. So I think it is caricature a little bit, but it is kind of accurate for people who went.
It's based on reality. Whether or not
Yeah.
it was sort of stretched a bit for for a story for comic for the comic value, it comes from
I mean,
a
it comes from
legit
like growing up
legit
in
thing that happened.
yeah, it comes from growing up in the depression, especially if you've been through the war, when they've been through the Holocaust and the Jews had to give up everything, and and between that and the depression, it's just like some of the Jews came over here before the depression. Some of them came over right before the war, but either way, they were like just very scared of what was going to happen. So I think all of that kind of made it, we need to save this, we need to keep this, we don't want somebody to take it from us. um that's probably part of it too. We don't want people to
Yeah,
take
that
it from
makes a
us,
lot of
so we need to hold
sense.
on to it. You don't want to give it to the Gentiles, and you know so it's just like, so I guess a little bit of that is more exaggerated there. So a lot of their behavior became a little bit more exaggerated too, so people, so yeah, so the Jews probably became known as holding on to their stuff. We're gonna keep our money safe and maybe take it out of the bank. We're gonna stock up all our canned goods in the basement so that we'll never be without again. Nobody's gonna take it from us again. So coming out of the war and coming out of the depression, they wanted to hold on to their stuff instead of spreading it out, and all of that other stuff is caricature.
Well, I think that this episode is dabbling in lots of caricatures because we have the Italian family as well that are like so happy to be living in one room and singing and
I mean,
entertaining
the
themselves.
TV and
Yeah.
the TV window
Yeah.
was freaking
That
I
hilarious.
mean,
Italian family is great though.
but
And
by the same token, like
That did
that
like
is an
that. I was gonna
exaggeration.
say that is ridiculous. Like,
It
I'm
Yeah. But
sorry,
it's
is,
like
but
that
if a
did not
family
ever
like
happen.
that existed, I'd want them to adopt me. They seem like
I
a
wish I
lot of
could speak
fun.
I
eloquently, but
like it like I don't doubt that a family like that has existed and that there wasn't a kid who came up with that freaking brilliant idea, by the way. And the parents like, found, and the family just found it funny. But, it's definitely a joke about that family, and it's a ridiculous one, but it is a very funny moment.
yeah, I was just thinking like I think it's not so the same, but like I think there's a the writers are dealing with like some sort of caricatures on a lot of levels. Like even the goons, right? Like they very much like have
Oh yeah.
a
They are like
specific caricature. Yeah, like I guess what I'm saying is there's a
but
lot on this show that
but
doesn't go too deep.
by the way, that's kind of the heart of stand-up routines,
Sure.
right? Like stand-up is full of caricaturing, right? Or generalizing. That's sort of a big part of, aside from like observational, but that, or even observational, comics have historically done that, have historically used sort of stereotyped cultures, stereotyped people, um, in order to get their laughs. It's a show about a stand-up comic. It seems kind of it seems apropos that that would be a part of the writing as well, that there would be almost this sort of caricature world that our characters are passing through.
Don't we need some of that to change the mood anyway? It is a dramedy. I mean, so that's rich writing to bring in funny or slightly exaggerated characters.
Oh
yeah, I think it's legit, in the context.
for sure. I'm certainly not criticizing it. I'm just sort of
No, I didn't
trying to
think you.
understand.
No,
I'm trying to
yeah,
understand how it fits in the context, and also I did legitimately want to get perspective from
oh yes,
Nancy
yes,
and Julia about that scene in the bank.
oh yeah.
But I prefer. I mean, I like it on the lighter side personally. This show.
You who loved all the conflict in Gilmore Girls, you like Maisel to be on the lighter side?
Well, I like it's not to say that I'm not going to love an episode that really punches me in the gut, but I haven't gotten that yet.
I don't think Maisel is lighter than Gilmore. In fact, in some of the facts, there's more drama in Maisel than there was in Gilmore.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot more drama in Maisel like across the board, but when Gilmore Girls went really deeply dramatic, like I was always like almost always really moved, like really really deeply moved. And here I haven't gotten that yet. It's like mostly a dramatic show, so I'm just sort of like
Maybe
in
that's
it.
why.
Yeah, I'm just in it for the drama. I'm watching it, right, and the opposite is the case, that when it goes funny, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so delightful. Um, but
Yeah,
I
maybe
haven't
that's
yet gotten a moment. I haven't really gotten a moment yet where it was like, and I'm just like blown into the wall, like like when I think of that for Gilmore Girls, I just remember the scene with Lorelai and Luke,
but
where she's like,
maybe in Gilmore when it did get more dramatical, it was not even as dramatical as Maisel is in the first place.
right. Well, I mean, the scene where at the end of season 6 is like, for me, with Luke and Lorelai, is like
Right.
super powerful, like just like moves
But
me to the
even
core.
to me, even that isn't as drama filled as Maisel. Like
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like I said, there have been some moments where I feel like the episode ended, like the scene in Paris where she calls Joel and she's talking to Joel, and then it ends with her like walking down this like dark corridor. It felt like that moment was supposed to really be like, oof. But I wasn't really super moved by it. Like I was like, all right, you know. And I just haven't got, like I said, I just haven't gotten a moment yet where I'm like, not to say that I'm not really engaged by the drama. Like
right.
I'm super like I'm
But what I'm
super
saying is like
invested in it.
I think probably because it's already Maisel is already drama and it's
Right,
already peaked up there. So in order for you to even be moved by it to be dramatical, even if you were
right.
to be moved, it would have to step up 3 levels.
Right. And so then the opposite is true. When it goes a little bit more on the quirky, kind of almost silly
Right.
side, I actually get moved by that because
Right.
I'm
You
not
get
as used to it. Yeah.
yeah. I think now I get where you're. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not
Um,
like a speaker like a lot of people, but like I
no,
think
I get it.
when like when we do have that light moment, that's in Maisel. That's what we're looking for more is those lighter moments rather than the dramatical.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, they're my favorite. Like, whenever something like 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 Susie falling off the bar stool, like,
Yeah.
physical comedy like that, it's not something that I associate with the show. And so when I see
But
it, like, I associate that with Gilmore, with a character like Kirk or something like that, which, is
pulling off.
fun. But like
Yeah.
when I see it here on Maisel, I'm so surprised by it that it just like, that it's just like freaking
Yeah. And
awesome,
so we're surprised. We're surprised by what we're not expecting.
That's
Yeah.
that's why Susie is the best character.
Right.
Yeah,
That's why
Susie. Yeah, it's
Susie.
true. It really is true. I think that I think that Susie is like the fact that she brings that pretty much in any scene she's
Right.
in makes her the most fun character on the series.
She's very because she's not what we're expecting in the synagogue. She's not what we're expecting to be in anywhere Midge is. If she's in Midge's world, we're not expecting her in Midge's world at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I liked about the barstool moment is that she said what she did after she did it.
I
She
know.
announced it. I loved that.
I love that moment so much. I love that moment so much. Yeah.
So
Well,
out of these 3 episodes, this is your favorite, obviously,
yeah,
of
this is
these
my favorite for
three.
these three for sure. For absolutely
I'm
100% sure. I mean, I still love season one so much that I don't know if I would say I love this episode more than my favorite episode of episode one, which I can't right now even remember what it was because season one, season one just felt like just one big thing of awesome storytelling. So I don't really, I'm not sure I can really distinguish like what was there exactly. How it was divided up. Um, but I certainly feel like this episode's back for me, back to how I was feeling about season one. Whereas the first 2 episodes, I was like, okay, this is cool. All right, and then in hindsight, it was kind of like, actually, I don't want to be in Paris anymore, you know.
How much
And
longer can
so
she work though and do her comedy?
I will say that the like that the the little gimmick of, I don't know, gimmick, but I mean just the format of having of finding an opportunity for a microphone of some kind, whether it be a champagne glass, a radio receiver, whatever, just suddenly like appear in the scene, and that means we're about to have a stand-up routine. Is I think it's getting a little old for me.
I 100% agree. I think that's the thing that I have really hated the last couple of episodes. Like, if I'm being honest, like, I absolutely hate it.
right.
Feeling forced on us
It's
as
just,
Yeah, it's
opposed
like
to.
you could see it coming. That's the other thing, is like it's like oh, here comes a stand-up routine.
well, but
There's the microphone.
also, like, I want a real story about the art of stand up, which isn't talking whenever you want to talk. Like, it is absolutely hard work. Like, the montage that we got in season one, where they're working on the same jokes over and over and over again and polishing them, like, that is so realistic
Like it would
to the art of stand up.
like it would
Right.
be it would be it would be
Sometimes
this is
learning the
this
art.
is
Sometimes learning the art is stopping and listening instead of just
yeah.
always having a microphone thrown in your
There
face.
it would be absolutely epic if like we get a few more of these episodes where she does that, and we're like, ugh. And then we get an episode where she she starts to do it, and somebody's like, sit down, you know,
Right.
you are like, seriously, like,
Like
it's
when she's
not all about you right now. Like, it's this person's, whatever, like, I sort of feel like I need that. I feel like I need, like, Midge, like, every time the spotlight comes on you, like, it does, like, or rather, their spotlight isn't always on you. I don't know. That is her personality. She is somebody who needs to be the center of attention when she's
I
in a
mean
room.
even at her own wedding, she was the center of attention, but she was supposed to be. But she even gets up and does the toast at her own wedding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also really like that specific aspect of this, and I'm glad that it came back to bite her, even though it didn't feel like she really got that much of her. What There wasn't much comeuppance. Like, she talked to her. She like was like, "I'm sorry," like,
There are many
but
roads to depression, like
it,
there are many roads to chest pain. Let's talk about what can cause people to have an unhealthy
Nancy, I think
brain.
you're unmuted.
Nancy, Nancy, I think you're unmuted. Okay, let's talk about
Um,
that. um,
I'm okay with some of these scenes or impromptu stuff, but yes, I totally agree. It'd be great to see more of the craft, more of the working through, more of the hard work that happens behind the scenes. But this a lot of what this show is about her secret identity and how long she can keep it a secret,
Yeah.
and she keeps bubbling up. So this is in the tradition of, there's a show where there's a Martian or there's a witch or there's a genie, and then this is some of that too. She's got that secret identity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that secret identity like theory. The thing that I have a problem with is that if someone's a funny person, like because we all know funny people, um, funny people are not necessarily good at all things comedy. Like in fact, they're often not. They have to find their path, right? Like some funny people are great at improv. Some funny people
Yeah,
are great at writing.
totally.
Some funny people are great at standing up in front of a room full of people and telling scripted jokes and delivering them in such a way that is, like has a laugh break. And like she doesn't seem fantastic at that, but like she can't be the funniest person in the room and be good at stand-up comedy and be good at like a party and be good in like she just can't. She's not.
I think I think my problem though is that there's this sense of entitlement, like the room is mine.
Yeah.
Like like whenever she like the Paris one was like, kind of for me it was like the peak of it, right? It's like you're in another country. You're in this bar where you don't speak the language of anybody
She
here,
didn't even know what kind
and
of bar she was in.
yeah, and this bar belongs to you, like very clearly, like it's like, oh, there's a microphone, I guess that means that this bar belongs to me, and oh, can you translate, thank you, and I think that's why, scenes like when she stumbles, because of that, I think that's the reason why they're a bit more satisfying, because I sort of feel like she needs that. She needs to fall like that. Um, and I don't know if the narrative is going in the direction where she comes to understand that the craft isn't just about her standing up in rooms and being the center of attention. But I certainly appreciate that she's sort of that this particular thing that she does is being um is being highlighted as a flaw of hers, that she does this. It's just happening a lot. It's getting very, it's like I said this once, it's getting a little like we could make a Saturday Night Live skit out of it.
And they did.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, there was this a Saturday Night Live skit that focused on weeks and like Amy Palladino. Oh no, like no, I
Somebody was
think
doing an Amy
she
Sherman
was
Palladino.
played by she was played by someone.
That's funny. Wow. Amy Sherman Palladino being caricatured on Saturday Night Live.
That's the big time. That's the big time.
That's pretty big. That's pretty impressive.
If you
Um,
can find that clip, post it in the clubhouse
yeah,
chat
please
on
post that
I
on
think
Discord.
I
Discord. I want
may
to see
have
it.
just found it. I'll
I
post.
definitely want to see that. I actually have to run, but this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to Saturday where we'll dive even further. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Steph and Diana, sorry. Totally losing it
Thank
this
you
evening.
guys
It's
for
getting late.
coming.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank
Yeah,
you
thanks.
both
Thanks
for
for coming.
hosting.
Night.
Everyone have a
Night,
good night.
everyone.